Hello, my name is Martin Baggin. I'm the author of In the Shadow of David, The Secret Rebellion. Well, it's an inspirational story, first of all. I mean, we're talking about the New Testament and the trials and tribulations of Christ. And it's the most pervasive and legendary story we have in Western civilization. I mean, that's a pretty good starting point. And the inspiration was, I wanted to put these characters in front of people and maybe in a way that they hadn't seen before. The Secret Rebellion first emerged as a screenplay. I wrote it as a screenplay. And it was on a ferry ride up to Alaska back to go visit home over the holidays. And I had 3 days on this boat, and it just came out. The story was done and 90% complete in the form of a screenplay. The Secret Rebellion is my first published release and the first in what I hope to be a series of In the Shadow of David stories. The writing did not come naturally to me at all. Writing is not a natural way of doing a lot of things. We don't speak the way we write. I don't think we think the way we write. Maybe the closest analogy is we sort of dream maybe in a writing sort of way. But the writing was not a natural thing. I know, and I am friends with naturally gifted writers, and their ability is something that I truly respect. I mean, everybody loves to sit down and read something that is well written, whether it's a novel or a textbook or a television ad. Good writing is to be appreciated, and it's a very difficult thing to do. I mean, if that were the case, if Jesus is a historical figure and Mary Magdalene a historical figure, John the Baptist, if these were real people, and the evidence I think suggests that they were. If you don't believe in the Christian way of looking at this, then what happened back then? What was going on? And I think the Secret Rebellion is a believable way of looking at things and trying to understand what these people were going through, the oppression that they were suffering, what their lives were like, and the fact that the time of Jesus was not that far removed from when the Jewish culture was autonomous and free. You know, there were first-hand accounts, or at least second-hand accounts, that survived into that era of when they were an autonomous civilization and culture before Rome stepped in. I think one of the most fun parts of this, especially creatively, were all the different ironies that I tried to incorporate into this story. Judas, for example. In my story, Yehuda is his name in the book, the traditional name for Judas. He is steadfastly loyal. He does not betray his friend. John the Baptist, or Yohanan, as he is called in the book, he is actually choice number one for Messiah. And he is chosen by the leader of this revolution, or the inspiration for this revolution, and that is Mary Magdalene, or Miriam. So there's all sorts of little twists and turns with this, and you know, I'm the first to admit that it's not likely that everybody's going to welcome these with open arms. But you know, it was fun. It was fun to see these characters in a different way and make them very human and try to imagine what they said and what they really felt about each other. You know, these were people. Whether Jesus was the Son of God, Yeshua as he's called in the book, or there were miracles happening, no matter what, they were still people. And they had to endure some horrific circumstances. They were trying to free their country. That's what I believe anyway, and that's how I portray them in the story. They're freedom fighters. They're much akin to our own founding fathers of the United States. And I think they were no less heroic. The research for the book was daunting. And I'll admit that you take a lot of license with looking into that sort of thing. The sources for exploring this sort of thing are not plentiful, and much of the resource is the Bible itself. But every once in a while you come across a nugget that can really send you forward. And one of the most fascinating things that I discovered about this was the fact that in the previous generation to the time of Jesus, it was established as part of Roman law that a Messiah would be recognized, not only by the Jewish culture, but by the Romans as well. And it's little things like that you start thinking about and realizing that, you see that and you go, I didn't know that before. So how would that affect people's thinking back then? How many people really knew it? I mean, with a literacy rate under 10%, how much of this stuff could have been known? But it was law back in Rome that if a Messiah, an accepted Messiah, appeared, that they would be accepted by the Roman government. Now, what that means, could it possibly mean that if a Messiah appeared, that Rome would abdicate its hold over its colonization? Now, if that's the case, the significance of a Messiah really does take on biblical proportions. I've been asked by a lot of people, friends, people in the publishing world, if I worry about offending people with this book. And, the answer is no. It is a story about religious characters, or characters who became religious personalities. There's hardly anyone alive in Western civilization that isn't somewhat familiar with the New Testament and Jesus Christ. Those are pretty much household terms and names. But my story is a different look at them, presenting them in a more human way. I mean, we have the most famous story and the most famous person probably in the history of the world, yet we know so very little about them. And the terms in which we hear about them and learn about them are steeped in an archaic language and with a predisposition towards their religious connotations and significance. And I wanted to look at this more from a standpoint of, okay, what could have been going on that gave those editors and future writers and storytellers the basis for what we have today? What could have been going on? And I think the premise of my story is an interesting one, and I think it is a reasonable one. Do I believe it? Do I believe that's what happened? No, that would be absurd. I mean, it's a story, no more, no less. But it's an interesting story. And I think that it paints a very heroic picture of these characters. Certainly, no one will be able to read The Secret Rebellion and come away with the thought that these principles were treated with disrespect. In many ways, again, I think they emerge even more heroic than the legend.